Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about how I got started on the topic of magical landscapes or the supernatural landscapes that I talked about in one of the last videos. So today I'm going to be looking on my artistic background and what I have in mind for this new series of illustrated landscapes in the next year. So I actually have spent a lot of time thinking about and depicting landscapes. I originally started a project over 10 years ago where I began collecting landscapes in the area that I grew up in. And this is a small mountain town completely surrounded by forest where people still celebrate Walpurgis Night, and there are just a lot of stories surrounding these forests. You know from part 1 of this video that I'm very interested in local legends and these folkloristic tales. So I read a lot of these stories where witches and white ladies and mountain ghosts played a role. For me, it wasn't so much about the content of these stories and about the characters, but rather the landscapes that they took place in, because these were the landscapes that I had around me every day. And back then I was using photography as a medium. I actually majored in photography in art school, so I set out to make a series about these special places. And I shot everything on film back then, always carrying big, clunky, medium format cameras and a tripod through the forest. So medium format is a larger type of film that gives you a wonderful amount of detail with a very fine grain, so the photos could be enlarged up to big, beautiful prints. And I worked on this series for quite a few years, and I traveled a bit. I hiked through a lot of eerie landscapes with my camera, and I eventually made a book from my photos. So I still like to look through it from time to time, and I still like the images a lot. They're still often on my mind. And I've never really decided that the project is finished, and I already had made plans to continue with a second series of images. But, somehow over the years I had less and less time, and analog photography became even more expensive than it already was. So not to speak about travel costs and stuff like that. And my equipment seemed to be heavier each time I looked at it. And after I had rediscovered sketching as a medium a few years ago, I never brought anything bigger than a compact camera to my hikes. So suddenly I was very focused on sketching. It was not very satisfying from a photographer's view, this small compact camera or the smartphone camera, but good to take snapshot notes that you can paint from later. I still love photography very much, but I'm interested to see if I can achieve a similar project with illustration techniques. So this time around I'm approaching this subject with pencils and brushes, only that it feels more like an expedition to new places than a journey into familiar names that I've known forever. And what I'd like to do with this is I'd like to make illustrations about these places and bring everything together in a series, maybe even in a book. I'm not sure about that yet. And to be honest, it's really hard because my landscape painting skills often aren't refined enough for me to express what I mean. And the results are often very different from what I used to pursue with my photography, so it's an entirely different way of looking at things. With photograph, you have the wonderful ability to render tiniest details, especially on film, without having to spend hours with a brush. And you have huge areas of motion blur in the same frame if you want to combine this. So making photographs was always a very intuitive approach for me, and one that I had practiced and refined over many, many years. So seeing a potential subject, circling it, choosing a composition, and then editing it later to see if it worked as a shot. And it was a completely different way of working, but I have to say that I worked on my photos quite a bit in a way that I would describe as painting into the photo, so I was simulating these darkroom effects with digital tools to get the prints that I wanted. And with watercolor, with painting, it's all happening directly on the paper, and it's a whole different story. I'm not the world's best landscape painter, and painting these complex scenes is a real technical challenge for me until I get the result that I want, that I sort of have envisioned in my mind. And that's why I find it's important to do a lot of preliminary sketches and studies. And so I keep painting, and I'm learning a ton about it through this project. And I don't know, even if I should go back to film and photos at some point, which I admit it's very unlikely, but I would love it. I notice how through being occupied with these landscapes and with these old tales, that new stories start to appear in my mind. And I'm already thinking about what stories could be hidden in all of this that I can tell. And I like the possibilities that illustration gives me, since it's such an adaptable and flexible medium. I really like the thought of combining illustration and field sketches with something similar to field notes, so similar to the kind of records that explorers in the 19th century kept on their journeys. It's just that my expedition is one into landscapes that only reveal their story if you have a certain way to look at them. So for now, I've already found and sketched a few landscapes where these tales could take place at. And in this year, in 2021, I'd like to explore the storytelling aspect behind these places more and, yeah, create bigger illustrations, create an entire series from my small sketches. I'm planning to film a few of these painting sessions, and I'd like to document more of the development of the series on video. So I hope that my schedule will allow me to work intensely on this, and I hope you'll be along for the journey. So that's everything for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you'll stay with me and you'll be along for the ride. As always, feel free to comment, like, and subscribe. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you very soon. Bye!